God can feel distant when your mind is crowded with voices that were never truly yours. Voices of old fear, shame, and beliefs. Old images of who God is, who you are, and what life is allowed to become. And the painful part is this: God isn't absent. Your awareness is just buried underneath programming that keeps interpreting God's presence as silence. When your mind is full of old programming, you can't see God clearly. You see God through the filter of everything you were taught to fear. You may have been taught that God is always watching, but not in a loving way. Watching like a judge, a disappointed parent, or someone waiting for you to fail so punishment can be administered. You may have been taught that love has to be earned, that peace comes only after you perform correctly, that you are only accepted when you are obedient, useful, and pure. So when you try to reach for God, you are not reaching from innocence. You're reaching through layers of conditioning. And that conditioning whispers, you're not worthy. You're not healed enough. You're not pure enough yet. This is where the distance begins. God hasn't moved away. The mind built a false image of God and placed it between you and direct experience. The mind does this with everything. It doesn't just experience life, it labels it. It doesn't just experience people, it compares them to old wounds. It doesn't just experience silence, it turns it into abandonment. So when God feels distant, the question isn't, where did God go? The question is, what image of God am I trying to reach? Because many people aren't actually seeking God. They're seeking relief from the version of God their fear created. They're trying to feel loved by a God they secretly believe is angry. They're trying to feel held by a God they were taught to fear. They're trying to surrender to a God their nervous system still associates with control, punishment, and rejection. And that creates an inner contradiction. Your soul reaches. Your programming resists. Your heart wants closeness. Your mind keeps scanning for danger. And then you call that tension distance. But it isn't distance. It's interference. Here's the paradox. The fuller your mind is, the farther away God feels. But God isn't far away. The mind is just loud. God doesn't compete with your thoughts. God isn't trying to shout over your fear, argue with your conditioning, or force through every mental pattern you inherited. God is much more subtle than your old programming. Programming repeats. God reveals. Programming pressures. God invites. Programming traps you in urgency. God waits beneath it. This is difficult because the ego wants God to arrive in a way the old programming can approve of. It wants a sign that removes all fear. It wants a voice that cancels all uncertainty. It wants a perfect emotional state that proves God is near. But God is not an emotional performance. God is not the sudden disappearance of all discomfort. God is not the mind finally becoming perfectly confident. God is the quiet presence underneath the discomfort. God is the space that remains when old beliefs rise up. God is the small inner pause between the programmed reaction and the deeper truth. This is why spiritual growth can feel so strange. You may expect closeness with God to feel warm, certain, and peaceful in every moment. But sometimes closeness begins as disruption. The old image starts cracking. The old fear starts resurfacing. The old shame gets exposed. The old programming becomes louder, not because it's winning, but because it's being seen. And when it's being seen, it can no longer hide inside your identity. That's why many people feel farther from God right before a deeper connection. The false image is losing power, but before it dissolves, it often screams. It says, "You're failing. You're lost. God has left you." But what's actually happening is this. Your awareness is becoming strong enough to notice the program instead of living inside it unconsciously. That's not abandonment. That's awakening. Ancient esoteric Gnosticism points toward this same truth in a deeper symbolic way. In the Nag Hammadi texts, ignorance is not just a lack of information. Ignorance is a veil. It's a condition of consciousness where the soul forgets its origin and becomes trapped inside a false perception. Old programming works the same way. It doesn't just give you thoughts, it gives you a world. A child who learns that love is unsafe doesn't simply think it's unsafe. They begin to perceive closeness through that lens. A person raised in shame doesn't simply have shameful thoughts. They begin to feel existence itself as if they are already guilty. A person taught to fear God doesn't simply disagree with it intellectually. Their body tenses up when they try to pray, and their heart braces when they try to surrender. This is why healing old programming isn't just about replacing one sentence with another. It is about seeing the lens. Because as long as the lens remains unconscious, you can't experience reality directly. You experience reality through distortion. And the most dangerous distortions are the ones that feel normal. This is what makes old programming so powerful. It doesn't announce itself as a lie. It sounds like common sense. It sounds like protection. It sounds like this is just how life is. It says, don't trust peace. It never lasts. Don't open your heart. You'll regret it. Don't get close to God. You'll be judged. And if you never question those voices, you'll spend your entire life thinking God is distant, when in reality, your own inner system is refusing to let closeness feel safe. So how do you apply this knowledge in your own life? You start noticing the moment your mind starts interpreting everything through the old wound. You sit in silence, and instead of forcing a profound prayer, you simply notice. My mind is telling me God is gone because I don't feel anything. You make a mistake, and instead of collapsing into shame, you notice. My programming is telling me I am unworthy because I was taught that love disappears when I fail. Or you feel anxious about the future, and instead of calling it spiritual weakness, you notice. My nervous system is trying to protect me with control because surrender feels unsafe. Noticing that is sacred, because the moment you can see the program, you are no longer possessed by it. You've created space, and in that space, God can be experienced differently. Not as the old judge, not as the distant ruler, but as the presence beneath the noise. The presence that was there before the programming. The presence that remains while the programming is being healed. The presence that doesn't require you to become perfect before you are allowed to experience the love of God. This is where it all comes together. You stop trying to fight every thought. You stop trying to disprove every fear. You stop trying to force yourself into spiritual certainty. Instead, you begin to separate God from the image your pain created. You begin to say, I may be afraid, but this isn't the voice of God. I may be feeling shame, but it's not the truth of my soul. This old programming may be familiar, but familiarity is not the same as reality. And that's when distance starts to dissolve. Because God is not found by obeying every old voice until you finally feel safe. God is found when you stop mistaking those old voices for truth. So, if God feels distant right now, don't rush to condemn yourself. Don't immediately assume you have failed, fallen behind, or lost your connection. Look gently, but honestly, at what is filling your mind. Old beliefs can make grace feel suspicious. Old shame can make love feel impossible. Old fear can make surrender feel like danger. And old programming can make the living presence of God feel far away, even when it's closer than your own breath. The work is not to become someone God can finally reach. The work is to stop believing the false inner world that says, God was never reaching for you. You are not trying to earn closeness. You are learning to recognize what has been blocking your ability to receive it. And the more clearly you see the program, the less power it has to define your relationship with God. The distance was never the final truth. It was the veil. And veils aren't removed by force. They're removed by seeing. If this journey spoke to you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone ready to experience life beyond thought. Comment below what old belief or inner program has made God feel distant in your life. I read every comment. If you would like to support my work directly, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/MagnumOpus333. Or you can explore some original merchandise at my Teespring store online. The link is in the description below. Or perhaps consider becoming a channel member or sending a super thanks. Any support is greatly appreciated. Remember, your consciousness is the key that unlocks reality. Let's keep unlocking it together. Thank you for watching. Until next time.